I can hear something calling, it's calling me every day. If taking a chance is a crime, then I've got hell to pay. I've been walking the streets in my mind, trying to find a new day. Keep on searching until I will find, until I find a new way. I'm gonna say something, I hope you don't mind. It's time to rearrange. I walk round in circles, I'm going nowhere. It's time to make a change.
Hi everyone, thanks for tuning in. I am your host, Charles Wallace. Today's guest is the founder of a company called
31 Degrees North.
And he is helping people find their latitude. What does that mean? Let's jump on into my interview with Joe Connor and find out. Joe, how you doing today? Thanks for joining me, man. I appreciate it.
Not a problem, Charles. Genuinely, it's a pleasure to be here, mate. Looking forward to it.
Yeah, same. We've been connected for a little bit here now on social media, on LinkedIn, and I definitely intrigued and just want to say right off the bat, kudos to you and what you're doing. I think it's awesome and needed. So this is a privilege for me, and I'm really honored to have you. So thank you.
Likewise, mate. Yeah, no, it's been an interesting few weeks. Yeah, that's for sure. Sure, get into, no doubt.
Well, hey, listen, let's if you don't mind, could you give a brief introduction of yourself for the audience?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, so I'm Joe Connor, originally from Liverpool, over the other side of the Atlantic in the UK, hence the slight accent. So in terms of who I am, so first and foremost, I'm a brother, I'm a partner, I'm a friend. But in terms of what I do, I'm a coach first and foremost. I'd say that's now my profession, my craft, as well as being an outdoor guide, and that's having previously served in the military. So I had a career in the military during my 20s as an army officer, where I served in the Mercian Regiment. So it was an armoured infantry battalion, and then left during my late 20s. And, we'll no doubt get into it. But after an extended period of just feeling completely lost with what to do with my own life, I kind of found solace in the outdoors. And for me, that's really helped to bring myself back into alignment. And I find myself now, coaching other people to bring them on that path, using the mountains as a vehicle.
Well, yeah, like I said, man, watching and seeing what you're doing, I think it's needed, and it definitely intrigued me. And I guess let's start there. I mean, I feel like you've had a pretty fascinating journey, and I know, following you a little bit, it went from even the corporate world through the military, and now you're guiding others. Like, can you share a pivotal moment of realization during your time in the Moroccan Atlas that led you to create your company 31 North?
Yeah, absolutely. So that's where the inception sort of happened for the idea, to be honest. And I think going back a little bit further, because I went to, I kind of had that classic, certainly British route of going to university, getting a, big corporate role on like a graduate scheme, and then just finding myself on that hamster wheel. And that's what I did. 21-year-old Joe, I can't really believe it now, but for him, he thought that his path was in finance and in the corporate sector. And in doing that, I felt completely lost. I wasn't even on the wrong lane in life. I was on the wrong bloody motorway altogether. And, then my solution to that, and it's very similar to what I did in the Moroccan Atlas, was to do what I know best and basically go to the mountains. No phone, just a GPS, no technology, just stripping everything back and taking a notepad and pen. So I did that in the UK initially in my early 20s, and that's what kind of led me to the military. And I had a fantastic career, really enjoyed it, met some phenomenal people who are, still really close with today. But even so, towards the tail end of that career, when you join as an officer, at least, and you go to Sandhurst, and which is our equivalent to West Point in the UK, it very quickly almost becomes a little bit of a desk job. And it was quite ironic because I'd left the corporate sector to spend more time in the outdoors. That's why I joined the military. And it gets to a stage where, as a kind of mid-senior level captain in the army, all of a sudden you find yourself behind this thing, behind a desk, punching away at the keys. And it's funny, despite having achieved those classic sort of metrics of success that society tells you, should you achieve X, Y, and Z, you will be happy. For me, it was a weird place to be, in that, to the outside world, if you were to have written my life down on paper, you'd think, bloody hell, Joe must be unbelievably happy. He's smashing it. He's, got a good career as an army officer. But it just wasn't the case on the inside. And it's a frustrating place to be when you've ticked those boxes, yet you're still looking and thinking, is this it? Is this what the next 20, 30 years looks like? So I did the same thing. I took myself off into the mountains, and this was using my kind of remaining leave, you call it resettlement, because I decided to leave the military at this point. And I booked a flight to Morocco just by myself, had my rucksack on my back, tent, stove, and there wasn't really much of a plan, but the plan was to, just jump off that treadmill, escape the noise and the chaos and the pace of modern living. And you'll know it yourself, just the intensity with WhatsApp, email, social media, it is relentless. And, I was trying to figure out my own path and purpose in life by reading more and more books, listening to more and more podcasts. And I had more than enough information. If anything, I was overwhelming myself. So I went to Morocco to escape all of that, to completely strip everything back. And flew out to Marrakesh, went to a little village called Imlil, which is nestled in the Moroccan Atlas, and it's a stunning part of the world. And it's quite sad to see what happened there last year. And I went off into the hills by myself, and found a pretty remote mountain valley and just stayed there for, the best part of a week, just kind of living off what I had, really. But crucially, what I was doing was, notepad and pen, asking myself those pretty uncomfortable questions of, what kind of man do I want to become? What exactly do I want my life to look like? And after a couple of days of settling into that environment where that societal conditioning is maybe eased slightly, and you're no longer thinking, what does society want from me? You're actually listening to what you want. And it's such a powerful environment to do it in those remote wilderness environments where there's nothing but you and your own thoughts. And I think day 4, it just kind of hit me. And the whole time I'd been kind of searching for, what can the world give me? What can I get from the world? And then it hit me like a ton of bricks that really I need to be of service to other people, helping them go do exactly what I'm doing right now, using these remote mountainous environments to help other people who, to put it simply, are pretty lost with what to do with themselves. And shortly after, I remember looking down at it was at this thing, the old GPS, and I was at 31 degrees north, and that was the latitude that I was at. And that is now, what I do under that name of 31 degrees north, is taking people out into the mountains, into the UK, overseas, to help them find their own latitude in life, basically, because it's really difficult to do so. Over Zoom, reading a book, I find it's incredibly effective to be in those environments to do it. So long story long, that's how it all started.
No, that's actually fantastic. And what I love about these, I set a guide for myself with some questions that I have up here, and you already got me off script. So That's that's a good thing. So there's a lot to unpack. So thanks for that great detailed answer. So let's start with, you talked about, as you say, I'm working on the fly more here, but when you talk about, and I think a lot of us get this way, how we feel, right? Like, I think we're going through the motions a lot of times. I don't think we really know what happy is or what happiness is or what we really want. But I do know that I think when we realize that maybe what we have isn't what we want or we're not happy, I think it becomes the scariest moment of our life. How do you, great to find it, how do you react to that?
In terms of, now that I've found it, what am I going to do with it? Or
What's your gut reaction when you realize, you know what, I'm not happy and now I want
yeah,
to do something about it? Because I think when people realize they're not happy, it's still the kind of, they don't do anything because they're scared.
mm.
So how,
Yeah, and it's a bloody good question, mate, because I think there's a lot of people, I look at the military as a classic example. There's a lot of people who stay in longer than they probably should do, to be honest with you, because they don't have absolute clarity or certainty as to, what better looks like beyond the military. So they choose the lesser of two evils in that respect. And yeah, it was a it was a really weird feeling getting to that stage in life where you've ticked all the boxes, and in theory you should be bloody happy. And I think this is often the problem with because we are products of our environments, aren't we? And we often chase these external metrics of success in pursuit of happiness, because really, whether we admit it or not, we buy the car, buy the house, we get the job in order to feel happy. That happiness and contentment is normally that end state. Those external things are normally a means to get there. So by definition, what we're actually aiming for is happiness. But I would say, in 99% of cases, those external things often don't bring us the happiness that we really think that they should. And I think that was where a big shift occurred for me, in terms of realizing that, if I get the dream business, the dream job, that in and of itself isn't going to necessarily make me happier. In order to find that contentment, what you need to change is your experience of that thing. And hence why, lottery winners or business owners who maybe exit the business, up until that point, they've been stressed, overwhelmed, feeling anxious for years. And one overnight windfall doesn't change years, decades worth of behavior patterns. And it takes a long time to actually unlearn that. And for me, that was the big one. And it speaks to, that kind of stoic philosophy, really, of bringing that locus of control internal rather than external, being able to create that gap between that stimulus in the outside world and the way that you choose to respond to it, which that in itself is a skill that takes practice, clearly. And I certainly am on that path. I don't have all the answers myself, but I think that was the biggest shift for me during that period, and finding myself where I am now.
yeah, I think, and you touched on it a little bit, and how, because I think we're given this vision, we're almost conditioned to we're told almost what should make us happy. So, and I think you just said a great word, and I've heard it a few times in conversations recently: unlearn, about that. So how do you try to, for yourself, number one, as you're still walking the path and learning, but what do you say to people when you start to work with them, as far as, having to break through this societal conditioning of what should make us happy? Because again, I think people still look at all the boxes that they've checked, right? And again, looking internally. So what's that first step when you start to work with people, Joe? How do you get them to start to change their thought process?
Mm. I think in that first instance, it's just helping them to become aware of what that thought process actually is. Because for a lot of us, we are very much in the trenches with that, and we don't even have an awareness of how we're thinking. I'll be honest, a huge part of it though is is changing their environments, because I think for that transformation to happen, you know yourself, your environment is absolutely key. And by taking them to the mountains, and like a condition with working with me is that they're not allowed a phone, a watch, even no kind of technology needs to find its way into that environment. Clearly, I have a phone and GPS for safety reasons, but point being, for them, it's guiding them into a remote location in an outdoor setting where they are completely free from distraction. And a big part of it, you know, despite the kind of military background, it's absolutely not a case of putting a load of weight on the back and beasting them up, you know, in the hills. It happens at a really slow pace, and it might involve me actually leaving them for an hour or two, and kind of being in Overwatch, and leave them with an exercise. You know, I might get them to write their own eulogy, is a good one. And trust me, doing that in that kind of environment, you know, really gets you to sit with that question of, you know, how do you want to be remembered? What do you actually want to do with your time on the planet? And there's something about that mountain environment that is like the ultimate kind of in giving you that perspective. And it just leads to these really amazing kind of breakthroughs that just otherwise are so bloody difficult to achieve when you are, you know, in the four walls on the laptop. So yeah, more often than not, it's a case of just getting them into the mountains.
Man, well, you start to talk about this. I like to think of it as almost like a digital detox. Now,
Mm.
what do you think the reasons are? Like, obviously, we're so it's so ingrained in us now, our phones, our computers, all of it. As much good as it does, what do you think the negative ramifications are of it as far as us being able to get in touch with ourselves?
Mm. Yeah, it's a good one because, you know, I have a phone, I have LinkedIn, I have email, clearly, and I think in today's society it'd probably be quite a lonely existence to get rid of all of that, to be brutally honest, because for all of its downsides, you know, we need to be just 2 seconds, a window cleaner at the door. Just give me.
No worries.
Oh no, he's just cracking on. It's fine. Yeah, you can edit that out, or you know, it's just life.
Yeah.
So yeah, like I have all of those things, but I think the key for me in terms of how I manage that relationship, you know, you can get down to the nitty gritty at a tactical level and not having any notifications on your phone, for example, and having certain control measures in place. Like even for me, starting 31 degrees north, I don't have any of it on my phone. It's only on a laptop, so that when I close down for the day, I can actually try at least and be present with my partner, actually be in the room, you know, because that is just as important for my own happiness and contentment as, you know, doing, you know, carrying out that purpose. But I think a big part of how you start the day for me is pretty crucial. Now, you know, morning routines, again, that is part of the problem, that there's an infinite amount of things that you can do before 5 a.m. that supposedly lead to the optimized life. But that in itself, it's almost setting yourself up for a failure. And of all the things I have tried and experimented with over the years, the one thing that has stuck day in, day out is before I reach for my phone before I put the kettle on, even, is just put my shoes on and step outside. And I know that sounds overly simple, but what it does, it helps you to start the day with some sense of control rather than being ambushed by the external world as soon as you wake up. Getting that bit of daylight in first thing and a bit of movement, just a walk, has been so powerful actually for just, again, bringing that locus of control internal rather than external.
I actually like that idea of stepping outside first. I've tried that myself, and it definitely, I'll admit it, not great at it. I hit or miss with it, but I do feel like if I look back on a day where I've gotten outside before I've started to connect, I'll say, I feel like the day does go better. Um, Joe, you mentioned for yourself, and I know you're helping others with it, but I'll phrase it this way about rediscovering purpose. And the experience you offer with 31 Degrees North, how do you help others to try to rediscover that purpose? But more importantly, what I think I want to understand from you is, how does that continue to help you with your own purpose?
Yeah, it's a really good question, because I think we hear a lot about finding your purpose as though it's already out there and you just haven't found it yet, which kind of suggests that there is some higher meaning, some higher purpose to existence. And depends on your viewpoint. Personally, in my experience, you know, there's no higher cosmic purpose. We are here by coincidence and luck, and which means that we have to create that. We have to create meaning out of the day-to-day life. And I think especially now that, not to go down the kind of rabbit hole of religion, but certainly in the UK, the kind of the society of today is far less religious than certainly centuries ago, and we've lost that sense of like meaning for being here. So I think the work that I do is actually just helping people to create meaning for themselves in their own lives. And a huge part of that contentment and happiness just comes from being on the path towards a goal that is meaningful towards you. And it's different for every single person. But again, trying to generate that in the trenches amidst the chaos and the noise is really difficult. And for me, I went through that process of creating that for me. And that is, my purpose, if you want to put it like that, is to help other people find theirs. And so long as I am working on 31 Degrees North, meeting new people, taking them out into the hills and helping them on that path, then for me, that is a life lived on purpose, with purpose. And again, just being really intentional about, how you want your life to look, because a lot of people that reach out, they maybe have their own business already, and they have very much fitted their life around the business. They fitted their lives around careers rather than it being the reverse. So it's actually getting them to start with the question of, what do you want your life to look like, and work backwards from there. How is a business, a career going to facilitate that lifestyle rather than the other way around? Does that make sense?
Yeah, it really does. And I've spoken to people about that before, about kind of looking at your future, seeing what you want that to look like, and trying to engineer it from, going backwards to move forward. But I think, and I can start to see as you talk about it, like why as you've been talking, as I'm listening to you, I've been trying to, I'm envisioning myself sitting literally almost in the mountains at some point, like trying to almost feel what that would feel like. When you're out on these, you call them expeditions with folks, with, the people you take up, into the mountains, do you start to witness almost personal transformations from these people? As you know, it must be really cool. Do you get to kind of see it start to happen as you guys are out there in the mountains?
Yeah, you definitely do have those moments. Sometimes it takes a little bit of time. It would be wrong of me to kind of dress this up as just head into the mountains and you'll have that light bulb moment and everything clicks into place, because sometimes it just doesn't work like that. And it might take um, a bit more time, maybe, several trips into the hills to really, peel back the layers and listen to that internal dialogue. That being said, I absolutely, well, saw it within myself clearly in Morocco, but that is probably the most satisfying thing about what I do now, especially for people who maybe haven't spent that much time in those environments. Because bearing in mind, I tend to work with people who are in the 20s, men especially in kind of professional roles. And I think I was fortunate that I was just in that generation ahead that didn't grow up chained to social media and kind of technology. And I had very much like an outdoors childhood. Very, very fortunate to have had that. But a lot of people that I work with haven't necessarily had it. So even just being in these environments, it blows them away. But then to do, actually have professional coaching and like asking them those questions and giving them the space, crucially, giving them that absolute space to think about those, the answers. Yeah, it's awesome. It's incredibly powerful for a lot of people.
And Joe, how would you say your experience in the military, being an infantry officer, even your corporate career, how does that all start to translate into your role now and what you do?
Mm. Yeah, so in terms of my own military career, I remember in many ways towards the end of it, it felt a little bit anticlimactic because operationally, it hadn't been that busy. Wasn't exactly kicking doors down and doing that sort of thing. And initially, that left me feeling quite disappointed with what I'd done. Um, but I couldn't afford to look at it like that, because when you go through Sandhurst, the leadership model that the army has, it's about servant leadership, being of service to others. And that could be something as simple as letting your troops go before you in line in the cookhouse or the chow house, or what you guys call it. Um, and it's all about putting others before yourself and being of absolute service to those who you work with. And that's probably the biggest takeaway, actually. And again, I alluded to it before, previously looked at it through this lens of what can I get from all of this, and putting myself at the center of that equation. But again, making that shift with 31 degrees north, that it's actually the client, the person I'm trying to help, who is at the center of that, and how can I serve them? We all know how good it feels when you do some kind of random act of kindness for someone else. You have such a warm feeling inside. So that's probably the biggest takeaway from the military career, is just being in absolute service to other people. And yeah, and I feel really proud of that now. I've come to terms with what I have and haven't done in the military, and it's the best, best few years of my life.
Yeah, I can tell just speaking to you here a little bit that how much just the importance of others just really stands out to me in just a short conversation here. And it's really cool to see. So I'll ask this. Can you, during any of your expeditions with people in the mountains, any one or two moments where you can say, you know what, this was really a breakthrough. You really, somebody connected. It's one of those moments where you're like, you know what, this is why I'm here. This is really, really good. Anything like that?
Mm. So this wasn't actually with 31 degrees north. I wasn't coaching as such. It was a trip I did It was actually a stag do, believe it or not. My cousin, and we did it's called the North Coast 500.
Hmm.
So it's a 500-mile route that goes all around the coast of Scotland, and it's by road, and it's unbelievable. If ever you come to the UK, that you've absolutely got to do it. And there are a couple of people on the trip who hadn't really spent that much time in the outdoors, and probably with my background, I did a lot of the planning for it. And we, on that route, we sort of parked the vehicles by the side of this loch, it's called Loch Moray. It's a huge freshwater loch in Scotland. And again, completely remote. You could not see anyone else for miles and miles and miles. Bearing in mind, it was during like the kind of lockdown as well, when we were allowed out. And one of the guys, he's got a little boy, and he'd never really done much in the outdoors, and it completely blew his mind. You could literally see him changing minute by minute as he was looking up in this environment. And he come away from that trip, bought a tent, bought a sleeping bag, and has since started going on camping trips with his own son. And that has absolutely set him on that path now. And it's going to have such a powerful impact for him as a dad and on his son. So it wasn't actually even necessarily like a coaching kind of example, but it was a pretty wholesome moment to have kind of helped facilitate that for someone.
Yeah, that's awesome. So, well, with the coaching with 31 Degrees North, what do you envision for the future? What are your aspirations with it? And do you envision your company evolving and becoming even bigger?
Mm. Yeah, it's funny you ask, because clearly helping other people to do this, I'm inclined to also ask those questions of myself and what I want for the business. And I think, just by way of being on LinkedIn, we're often told that bigger is always better. You've got to scale, you've got to, grow. And initially when I started, I was like, that was the intention, got to grow the business. But you know what? I think the intention at the moment is to just really focus on the craft for the next couple of years, and genuinely try and become world class at coaching, and really further my own experience in the outdoors. Because I buy into what that environment can do so much, that for me to try and do this online and try and grow it, it wouldn't really be true to what it is that I'm actually trying to do. And I'm a big believer in working one-on-one. Like, for me, I just work best one-on-one. So I think the plan is to just have a really solid client base, work one-on-one and only in person. And again, if you ask the kind of business people and the entrepreneurs of the world, it's not exactly the best business model, but in terms of my own happiness and contentment running that, I think it'll be through the roof. So that is the plan, to become world-class at coaching, world-class in the outdoors, and just facilitate really transformative experiences for people, both in the UK and overseas as well.
I don't know if you noticed, but I was grinning ear to ear as you were saying that, because Joe, I swear, the other day I did kind of a post about the podcast where I said, 2024, I'm just determined to have great conversations, develop as an interviewer. And once I do that, all the rest will fall into place. So I literally kind of had this same in my mind, this kind of epiphany for myself, even just recently, that it's like, what, it's more focused inward instead of outward. But I think if you do that, if I do that, people listening do that, I think everything that you want will eventually happen. So I kind of thought this would be a cool question to ask. Going through what you were through, finding yourself for your search in the mountains, if right now Joe today took Joe back then out into the mountains, how would you coach yourself?
Bloody hell, that is a very good question. I've not been asked that before. I'll have to write that one down. With compassion, first and foremost, because I think back to, you know, that version of Joe, and he's a good guy, he's a decent guy, trying his best, trying his hardest, but just cannot see the wood for the trees. And I think in life we're often in a rush to get the result, you know, and sort of and find that path. But I think that would be the primary sort of emotion running through me as a coach would just be compassionate towards that version of myself, give him the time and the space to think about it. And I wouldn't change anything, you know. I genuinely mean that, because it wouldn't have kind of got me to this point right now. Yeah.
Yeah, I like that. As soon as you said the word compassion, I don't know what answer I expected from you, but compassion really stuck out to me, because I think we're all guilty of not showing ourselves compassion. We'll try to maybe show compassion to other people, but probably on our own selves, a lot of times we're probably the worst at that. So yeah, I think that's fantastic answer. Well, listen, I know you said you're not, you know, you're focused on becoming world-class at coaching, you know, but people want to get in touch with you. They want to learn more about 31 Degrees North. What's the best way to get in touch with you?
The best way is through LinkedIn. That's the only platform that I'm kind of visible on, and it probably will be for the foreseeable, to be brutally honest. Just because there's quite a few Joe Connors out there, what I'll do is you've got the link, so maybe just pop that in the show notes. But even if people just want to have a chat, there's no obligation to, you know, pack your bag and join me in the mountains. I'm more than happy to just have a chat and share my own experiences. It'd be great to hear from anyone who's interested.
Well, listen, I think I can sum this up in this way. It's been enlightening to speak with you. I think for the rest of my day today, I'll be thinking about the mountains and trying to discover myself still, because I still think that journey that you're helping people with, that I'm on, that you're on, I don't think the journey really ever ends. It's always just looking for the next destination, so to speak. And I appreciate people like you, Joe, that are willing to come on, share your stories, have a conversation, and genuinely just looking to help other people. I think it's fantastic, and kudos to you. And I wish you nothing but success in what you're looking to accomplish. So thank you.
No, genuinely, thank you, mate. And I think I said it before we went live, but I think what you're doing with the podcast is absolutely critical for men, especially. So I take my hat off to you. Yeah, it's really good to see it grow.
No, well, thank you, man. That coming from you, I appreciate that. And I appreciate that you were gracious enough to spend some time with this crazy dude from across the pond, man. You know? So anyway,
Likewise.
I still shake my head sometimes. I say, man, I'm happy these people are willing to talk to me. So thanks, man. I appreciate it.
Thank you. Cheers, Charles.
All right. Well, everyone, thanks for listening, and take care, and look up Joe, and just keep searching for what you're searching for. Thank you. Bye.
This has been the Bare Essentials. Thanks for listening. And remember, never hibernate on your goals.